Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views, and we'll be sharing our attention to right here back at home in South Africa, where the formation of South Africa's government of National Unity, the GNU, marked a pivotal shift in the country's political landscape, and it's been 100 days since we saw that. Very pivotal moment in South Africa's democratic history. And as the ANC lost its majority rule for the first time since the dawn of democracy, once viewed as the uncontested force in South African politics, the ANC now finds itself navigating the murky waters of coalition governance alongside very, very unlikely allies. The GNU's first 100 days have been a mixed bag. I think we can all agree. While certain ministers have pushed forward ambitious reforms, widespread issues like crime, inequality, and unemployment remain as daunting as ever. With internal disagreements and public skepticism casting a shadow over its early days, the question looms: is the GNU really the answer to South Africa's political and economic woes, or just another temporary fix in an increasingly fractured political environment? And today we're joined by a political analyst, Sandile Swana, who will help us unpack the key successes, shortcomings, and future prospects in this historic coalition. Mr. Swana, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you here on Salam Media.
Oh, thank you, Slailo, and let's extend our greetings to the listeners of Salam Media.
I think first and foremost, we can start with the obvious question. 100 days into the government of national unity, having witnessed the African National Congress lose its majority rule for the first time since 1994, and having them leading the government of national unity. First, do you think this has marked the beginning of the end for ANC dominance? And according to you and what you have looked at and analyzed, how has this coalition fared so far in managing this transition and South Africa establishing this new government?
Thank you. This indeed marks the end of the monopoly power of the African National Congress in its running of South Africa. It is no longer able to run South Africa as a majority party, and it will not do so in the future, certainly not for the next 10 years. It's not going to run as a majority again. The second thing is that regardless of that, there is a grand coalition that is running South Africa. They've been able to form a government with other parties in a competitive multi-party democracy. So that is an achievement if you look at places like Zimbabwe, Angola, Mozambique, where a competitive multi-party democracy has failed to really take root. So that is an achievement on the part of the ANC as well as on the part of the parties that are represented in parliament.
I think one of the key issues that South Africa has always grappled with has been the issue of economic recovery, and that obviously perpetuates issues like unemployment. When it comes to economic policies, what's your assessment of the GNU in its first 100 days? Do you think they're addressing the core issues when it comes to the economy? Because let's be honest, if you fix the economy, you have people working and you have businesses, not having as much red tape to be able to work. That's when a lot of social issues like crime and, a host of other issues will start to be combated. So that's why I think maybe an assessment of the economic policies of the GNU need a bit of a closer look. What have you made of them thus far?
Let me first of all say this, that the ANC itself will present its assessment of the first 100 days next week on Monday. So we don't have a report from the ANC. And therefore, I'm also not aware of two documents. I'm not aware of a document where the GNU itself stated measurable targets that they are going to achieve in the first 100 days, and they have not tabled a report of whether and to what extent they've achieved those targets. So everybody who comments on this comments according to their own scorecard that they develop themselves. Now, the economic side of the issue has got maybe two elements we can comment on. The first one, which has been popularized, was the issue that the rand strengthened against the dollar once it became clear that the GNU is going to take root, and then also the bond market strengthened and so on. If you go right now to the website of Investec Bank, one of the biggest investment banks in South Africa, you will discover that they are saying that the rand is weakening against the dollar because of the changes in the interest rates in the United States of America, as well as the wars that are happening in Western Asia and so on. But when the rand was strengthening before, they said it was because of the GNU. Now they are telling us about things that are not even happening on the continent of Africa, let alone
external factors. They call them external factors.
Yeah. So there is a mischief that assumes that we are gullible South Africans who never studied finance, we never studied economics. They can tell us anything at any time. Nevertheless, those indicators, the value of the rand, does not tell you that the capacity of the economy to produce more goods has increased. It doesn't tell you that more factories have been built, more dams have been built, more bridges have been built. All that it tells you is how many people are buying and selling the rands, to what extent people are buying and selling the rand, to what extent are buying and selling South African shares on the JSE. It says nothing about the capacity of the economy to improve and to start employing people. So that is just the propaganda of the elites that they use to intimidate the ANC, which unfortunately is often led by economic illiterates and cowards, that Professor Ben Turok warned them of that cowardice many times over, and neoliberal policies that have damaged this country. So on the economic side, we cannot use the rand, the value of the rand or the performance of the JSE. I spoke to one of the top analysts in South Africa, and he told me that, look, this Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the prices are inflated already. It's overpriced because people have got unrealistic expectations of what is going to happen. Then the second thing is that the Bureau of Economic Research at Stellenbosch says that by 2026, we will have reached a GDP growth rate of about 2.2%. That is far ahead of the predictions of the South African Reserve Bank and far ahead of the predictions of the IMF. The main partner of the GNU, Business Leadership South Africa and BUSA, say that they are going to achieve 3.3%. Regardless of all those percentages, if you don't get to 4%, unemployment is still going to increase anyway. So during this period, unemployment is increasing, and we expect unemployment to continue increasing for the next 3 years at any rate. So when you talk about their policies, those policies, they don't have any policy right now. And Mantashe tried to say he's going to achieve 8%. We don't know of anything concrete in practice that they have in place that is going to change the unemployment rate for the better.
One thing that I think stood out since the formation of this GNU was Pakstau's 100 billion rand infrastructure program, which was dubbed, a potential game changer for job creation. Since we're on the topic of economics, do you think this will succeed where past initiatives have failed, or are there concerns it might not deliver the desired outcomes?
Pakistan cannot possibly have a brand new 100 billion investment initiative on infrastructure. That has been there since Cyril Ramaphosa took over power. And Sputler, who is now a Minister of Electricity, was in charge of that. And unfortunately, during that time, there are two things that are problematic that have continued to happen. It is interesting to me that when you look at the CAPEX, capital expenditure programs of the top companies in South Africa, the largest companies, since Ramaphosa took over, the CAPEX expenditure of companies that are in South Africa was actually 100% bigger externally. In other words, the money that they spent was 100%, which means they were spending a third of their capital expenditure in South Africa and the other 2/3 outside of South Africa. Now, since Ramaphosa took over, the dividend payments, in other words, out of the profits that were being made, they moved from about 40% to 75% dividend outpayment. In other words, if profits are made, they were saving 60% before Ramaphosa took over to invest to invest at all. After Ramaphosa took over in 2018, they were now taking 75% of profits and giving it to the shareholders, not investing it. So, and then since the days of 2010, after the 2010 World Cup until today, the program of the government has been a program of disinvestment in the economy, or underinvestment and disinvestment. Certainly, Transnet, Eskom, and others, the state-owned companies and the municipalities have been disinvested. So the state has been on a program of disinvestment. And now we are not having any evidence that, number one, the state is investing. They should be investing in total private sector plus the public sector, a total of 2.1 trillion rands a year, every year, 30% of GDP every year. We are nowhere near that. We're not even anywhere near 20% or even 18%. We're nowhere to the required rate. So Pakstow, he has been traveling around. I looked at his track record when he was a mayor after he left to become a minister of Cocta, just to see whether he would perform at Cocta as a deputy minister. Him and Makura, when you look at the province of Gauteng and the city of Joburg and you compare, it was a fundamental, serious economic devastation that the two of them led together. So anything involving Pakstow and investment is a pipe dream.
And just lastly, before I let you go, the stability of the government of national unity, what do you make of it? ANC, DA obviously being the two biggest, parties within this coalition. And they've been having back and forths, I think, since the beginning of this grand coalition. And it seems like whatever is happening nationally will be affecting what's happening provincially, where they're in coalitions, and also vice versa. This relationship, this marriage between the two political parties, what do you make of it? And is it stable enough to carry us through the next elections when you look at your crystal ball?
Yeah, so the GNU, for instance, from a Gauteng perspective, well, there are basically three provinces to consider. Western Cape is stable because the DA is in total control there. The KZN province is under constant pressure because the MK party feels that they've been left out of the GNU unfairly, and they have 45% of the vote. So they could topple the GNU, the provincial government of provincial unity there. In Gauteng, it doesn't look like the DA is going to be given any bite of the pie at all. So that is at provincial level what is going on. At a national level, I think that the GNU at a national level is secure. And what makes it secure is the money of the BLSA and the BUSA. Given the type of leadership in the ANC that you have under Ramaphosa and his supporters who are pro-DA, who are pro-BUSA, who are pro-white monopoly capital. So the thing that keeps the GNU, there are two things that keep it in place, the Grand Coalition, is the money of big business behind it. Two, is the fact that anybody who has joined the GNU has not necessarily joined to achieve anything for you and me per se. But the GNU is a platform for each party, whether it's the UDM, the PA, any party, the Freedom Front Plus, to campaign for 2026 and for 2029 using state resources. Because every little thing they do, they open a door, they announce it on TV. They do this, they announce it. They are campaigning for 2026 and 2029. That is what is going on there. So they will not abandon that platform. It's a good, free of charge campaigning platform that is state sponsored.
And just out of 10, 100 days into the GNU, how would you mark them?
I think that it is, first of all, unfair to mark them at this. But if we then take what they have said, I mean, they've mentioned, for instance, Balula, when he said what is going to be discussed on Monday, they've mentioned load shedding. Now, I would score, let's say 40. I would give them a 40 to 30, a score like that. And I'll use just one example. One example is that you can see schools are going to be opened again in 3 months, in January, 3 months or so from now. And the standard 4, which is grade 6 teachers, 80% of them are not qualified to teach maths. Those needed to be completely removed, all of them, and then the new ones put in. That 80% that are not qualified needed to be there. We don't know for the grade 4, standard 2, what is going to happen, because 82% of the children cannot read for meaning in any language who are in standard 2 or grade 4. Every department is under budgeted, every single one. Defense, education, correctional services, the prisons, every department is under budgeted. So these people are not well staffed to deliver anything. They have not budgeted enough for anything. So right now, and they have no performance contracts, all of them. So I would give them 40%, and I think that is generous.
Well, we're going to leave it on that note, Mr. Swana. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And I think we'll catch up when there's another 200 days of the GNU, maybe even 1 year, if it will even reach 1 year, as many analysts have said, it won't even make it to the 365 days. So interesting times ahead. But thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
There you have it, Sandile Swana, the political analyst, giving us his insight on the first 100 days of the government of national unity. And yeah, as a South African common person, man on the street, what's your scorecard for the government of national unity? 100 days in. Do you see it as something that has been working for you and I? We've seen load shedding kind of sort of disappear. We've saw a drastic drop in fuel prices. No, maybe. You can give us a shout on our various social media platforms and tell us what you think of the government of national unity. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to Stephanie Fick from Outer, and we'll be speaking about issue of licenses and license discs, if South Africa should consider having digital permits, digital licenses and license discs, and how will that impact or improve just generally how we do things. So Stephanie Fick joins us right after this short break.